Good morning, everyone. Welcome into the SEC Morning Report here on Southeastern 14, presented to you by Chomps. Make sure that you check out the description below to get all the information and a little bit of a discount as well on Chomps, which is a healthy, delicious snack. You can get different types of protein like venison, like beef, like turkey. So make sure that you check out Chomps. Also, you can partner with us. Send your information to caroline.smith@southeastern14.com and become a MVP of Southeastern 14 today. But guys, it is Monday, and you know what that means. If you have been a part of this channel, you know that each and every Monday we go back and we look and see, okay, what did these teams do? How did they tell us information about themselves this past weekend? What did we learn from each team? So we'll start with Alabama. The Crimson Tide defeated Ole Miss 24-10. Things did not look good in that first half. I mean, they went backwards one time in the red zone. Seth McLaughlin has a terrible snap. They end up having to come away with a field goal there, and they still are down 1 point at halftime. And I just had a feeling that said, hey, Alabama just played as bad as it can possibly play and is down 1 point to Ole Miss. And Ole Miss was not capitalizing on the opportunities it had to put Alabama away. I mean, when you have opportunities to take a punch at a team like Alabama, when they're giving you some opportunities, you better take them. You better not miss, because once they get up off the mat, you're done. It's over with. And Alabama showed toughness. I think that is what we learned out of Alabama. They showed toughness and grit. And I think more than anything, that has to please Nick Saban. We can talk about, Jalen Milroe and this Alabama offense maybe isn't what Alabama offenses have been over the last few years. But I think Nick Saban would tell you, if he could have one quality about his offense, having some toughness, having some grit, being able to run the football when they want to run the football, I think he absolutely loves it. It's an identity that he wanted to get back to. I think you're starting to see that. You're starting to see some 12 personnel. They're getting downhill, doing more duo blocking than they are, full zone blocking. They're getting lots of double teams at the point of attack. They're doing some design quarterback runs with Jalen Milroe. We saw some quarterback sweep. I said going into the game, will Nick Saban allow Tommy Rees to call this more like a 2020 Notre Dame team with Ian Book at quarterback? And we saw back then Ian Book, a lot of design quarterback sweep, some bootleg off of it. We saw some play action pass, taking some deep shots, and that is exactly what we started to see out of Alabama on Saturday. I think that Jalen Milroe, while he wasn't, I guess, elite in his play, he was plenty good enough. He made one terrible throw there in the end zone, a really bad decision. But other than that, he gave his receivers chances downfield. They have to get better in the red zone. But I think toughness is what we learned about Alabama. They have it, and now going forward, they've got to just get more consistent, and Jalen Milroe continue to adapt that offense towards his strengths. And I think as the team knows, hey, that's our guy now. We're going forward. Tommy Rees is able to kind of get things going a little bit. You're going up against a Mississippi State team that cannot stop the run very well. South Carolina ran the ball on them, and that is very shocking, if you know, to say the least, with what South Carolina has been able to do. So Alabama should have a big week running the ball this weekend. For a second week, Alabama has a different running back step up. It was Roydell Williams in the USF game. It was Jace McClellan in the game against Ole Miss. So Nick Saban and company, they calmed the waters a little bit there in Tuscaloosa, and now they'll go over to Starkville this week. So that's what we learned about an Alabama team that plays elite defense as well. The defense was really, really good. They shut down Ole Miss's run game, even with Deontay Lawson out. So we learned that front is very salty as well. Arkansas I think we learned that Arkansas can be explosive. Now, admittedly, some of that has to do a little bit with LSU's deficiencies in the secondary, but still, you have to have somebody dialing up the shots, and you have to have somebody, being able to separate at receiver / tight end. They had Luke Haas, freshman, that had a huge game, had a couple touchdowns. Andrew Armstrong finally got involved in some things, with the plays down the field. KJ Jefferson is a gutsy guy. He's a really good player, really good college quarterback that, ran the ball well enough. Rashad Dominion got in the mix and helped out. If you got to wonder, man, if Arkansas just had a healthy Rocket Sanders, what this could have looked like. Always a great game between those two teams. So I think Arkansas showed a lot of resolve, but at the same time, they left a lot out there. They left a lot, twice getting down in there in the LSU red zone and coming away with field goals. If you're going to go on the road and win an SEC, you got to finish those to 6 points. Got to be able to do that. KJ Jefferson turned the ball over a couple of times. Got to value the football. Can't be reckless with it. And Arkansas, they were holding down that LSU offense defensively, being aggressive, things like that. But get lost in coverage a couple of times. Brian Thomas goes up and makes a couple plays on a 50-50 ball, and then that's kind of all she wrote over there. Jaden Daniels and company just made enough plays to beat him. But I think we learned that Arkansas has some resolve, and if they get Rocket Sanders back, particularly if they could get him back for this Texas A&M game, there's still plenty out in front of this Arkansas team. They're still playing hard for Sam Pittman. That offensive line is starting to improve a little bit. They did have a couple of breakdowns of protections, but especially the offensive tackles. But I think Arkansas overall, discipline, finishing in the red zone, and being able to just take advantage of opportunities that are there in front of you. Got to execute, especially on the road. There'll be a interesting game in Jerry's World against Texas A&M. It's always a crazy game, a bounce of ball type game. Okay, what's going to happen here or there? And there's going to be a play or two in this game where Arkansas has to show discipline, and they have to, just have a better playmaker at the end of the day than Texas A&M does. LSU made those critical plays in this past game, even with Arkansas playing quite well. But I think overall we learned that there's still plenty of fight left in this Arkansas team. Auburn, we learned that they are terrible on offense. They have not had a quarterback throw for over 100 yards against a Power 5 team in their last 5 opportunities to do so. They do not have any efficiency when it comes to the passing game. They're not able to convert on third downs. The quarterbacks are holding the football a long time. They're not able to protect well. They do have good running backs, but Damari Alston, he got banged up with the shoulder. I think he's been their best back. They're thin in the secondary a little bit now, with Keontae Scott being out. They had a couple guys going in and out. I just don't think this Auburn team, and Hugh Freeze has alluded to it, is where they need to be roster-wise right now to compete the way they want to. And it's not getting any easier with Georgia coming in to the Plains this week. Now, that will be a great environment, and we know that the Deep South's oldest rivalry is always a interesting matchup between those teams. But I just think you got to be really, really disheartened in the play of Peyton Thorne, and how there's no anticipation. They're not delivering the football with confidence. Robbie Ashford, who knows where his head is with the way that they've used him, coming in, only letting him run the football. Then they try to throw it some with him. And by the end of the game, Holden Gariner's in for Auburn. So just abysmal quarterback play, a lot of injuries on this team right now. They're going to have to fix a lot of things with Georgia coming into town. I don't know that they have the time to do it. What we learned about Auburn, when you boil it all down, is Hugh Freeze is recruiting well, and he's going to have to because this roster is not ready to take on SEC competition, and they just got absolutely manhandled at the point of attack a lot of times. You had Texas A&M that just had better playmakers and were more physical a lot of times during that game. Texas A&M should have won that game a lot bigger because there was a couple times in the red zone that they didn't execute. All right, let's talk about Florida. The Florida Gators. We didn't learn a ton about Florida because they had a lot of offensive line stuff going on, had a couple suspensions. Kingsley Aguakon was out to injury. So the first half, they had 3 linemen out. Then they had 1 just missing because of an injury that Kingsley Aguakon in the second half. And they didn't run the ball great, but it's kind of a game where they sleptwalk a little bit of an emotional letdown after that Tennessee victory that was real big at the Swamp. And then you play a team like Charlotte. So that was a little bit understandable. I just think that, it's going to be a deal where Florida is going to try to run the football and play good defense. I mean, that's their calling card. Graham Mertz is going to be efficient, and they're going up against a team this week in Kentucky that's kind of a similar ball team. And I think when it comes down to it, Billy Napier, that's kind of his calling card. Hey, can we get Etienne? Can we get Montrell Johnson going? They didn't do so in this game. Like I said, there was some inconsistency and some availability issues on the offensive line, but I wouldn't overreact to the Charlotte game there. I think we saw what Florida can do in big moments when they stepped up against Tennessee and really punched them in the mouth, particularly with that running game. So just want to see them come out and see how they're able to run the ball against Kentucky. Really, I think that's going to be the tale of that game. Graham Mertz is playing good football. Ricky Pearsall, what a catch he made. I mean, that was ridiculous. We learned that Ricky Pearsall not only is a freakishly talented receiver in terms of his dexterity and being able to catch that ball with one hand, but he's also a tough guy too. Took a shot on it. So I mean, it is really, really fun to see when Florida is playing some good football. They are right now. I think it makes the SEC better when Florida's competitive, and I think it's going to be a great game in Lexington this weekend as the Gators travel up to take on Kentucky. Now let's talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We learned that the Georgia Bulldogs are going to be just fine on offense. People were worried about red zone offense. Well, they went 6 for 6 in the red zone, 6 opportunities, 6 touchdowns. Carson Beck had 8 possessions in this game that he was a part of, scored 6 touchdowns on there in those possessions. He was 22 of 32, 377, had a couple of drops in there, one particular big drop. Yes, he missed a wide open Jackson Meeks down the field. But when you talk about creating explosive plays, the Georgia team is starting to do that, and that's dangerous for other teams, particularly when Georgia's healthy. Right now, they're without 2 running backs that are going to play a lot for them in Roger Robinson and Kendall Milton. They're without 2 tight ends that they're counting on to produce this year, particularly Lawson Lucky, who's getting his way, could be coming back from that tightrope surgery on his ankle. So that would be big. They are getting excellent play out of Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp. Hey, we learned that Brock Bowers is still around. They decided to feed him the ball a little bit. 9 catches, 120 yards. He passed 2,000 yards for his career. And I think even with the injuries there to running back, Ladd McConkey was still out. Like I said, the 2 tight ends, Amarius Mims out at tackle. Georgia is starting to play better and better. And listen, you got to give all these teams that come in and play Georgia, they treat it, particularly lower level teams like a UAB, they treat it like their Super Bowl, so to speak. Trent Dilfer was talking it up all week, and they made a couple plays defensively. You'd like to see Georgia be a little bit more disciplined on that side of the ball, especially with a big lead. A couple times made some sloppy plays, but overall, I think we know what Georgia has defensively. They are the most talented team in the country. They have the most depth in the country, and that's on display because when you looked at the injury report going in this game, it was 15 deep for Georgia. I mean, they were banged up going into this game against UAB. They handled their business quite well. And I think when it comes down to it, Carson Beck is playing some really good football. He's not putting it in harm's way. He gets the team in and out of the correct plays. I mean, making sure, hey, we don't like this look. Let's get it changed over there. Dejan Edwards has helped a lot since he's come back. So I think we learned that Georgia's offense is becoming explosive, and I think it's going to be the healthiest as a team that Georgia has been this week when they go to Auburn. I look for them to get some of those guys back. If they can walk, if they can operate at, 75, 80%, I expect to see some of those guys come back for Georgia and play in an SEC contest. Now the Kentucky Wildcats. They went on the road, beat Vanderbilt. Their defense stepped up, produced 2 touchdowns. Anytime that happens, your chances of winning are basically 100%. I mean, you're able to turn the team over and create points out of it, and that's a big deal. They forced another one where they got a short field against Vanderbilt. So the calling card of that Mark Stoops team: let's be efficient, run the football. Let's make enough plays passing, but let's play some incredible defense. And that's what they were doing. They forced havoc over there and made AJ Swan uncomfortable, and he threw a couple pick sixes to him. So I think you're starting to see, Devin Leary and this offense, do some good things, particularly in the quick game, the short game. Ray Davis is playing really well for Kentucky. They're getting a little bit of movement up front, but Devin Leary has to, make better decisions throwing the ball down the field. He put the ball up in double coverage one time. He underthrew one as well. And I just think you're needing to see some more confidence out of him throwing the ball down the field. Liam Cohen's got to find ways to get that running game and that perimeter pass game going early and get those defenses starting to be a little bit more aggressive against them to open up some of the things on the back end. But at the end of the day, it's a road win in the SEC. I don't care if it's Vanderbilt. You take it all year. Remember, Kentucky didn't win that game last year at home against Vanderbilt. So now you're undefeated with an opportunity to host a Florida team that looks very similar to you. Like I said, very good at running the football, wants to play very sound, but at the same time, very, very active defense over there. Brad White going up against Billy Napier. I like that matchup inside the matchup there. But Devin Leary got to get some more confidence throwing the ball down the field and just not put the ball in harm's way. I was really, really high on Devin Leary coming into the year because I thought he would return to the NC State form of 2 years ago, especially with Liam Cohen calling plays, and it hasn't necessarily come to fruition yet. Is this the game where he puts it all together? I really like those receivers at Kentucky, but ultimately I think we learned, hey, the big blue wall, Ray Davis, and then that defense over there with Trevin Wallace and J.J. Weaver, Deion Walker, that's where this game, coming up against Florida, is going to be won. If they're going to do it, they got to do it with that Mark Stoops DNA that he's kind of put together there at Kentucky. So that's what we learned about the Wildcats. LSU, we just learned that Jaden Daniels is so consistent. I mean, had some struggles early on. They weren't really moving the football the way they wanted to, but then he finally started forcing the ball down the field a little bit. Now, when I say forcing, I mean just taking what's there. You got a one-on-one matchup with a guy like Brian Thomas or a guy like Malik Neighbors. Well, guess what? That's open. If you ever get one-on-one, they're open. I don't care if the guy's in their shirt. They're open because they're the type of receiver that they can go up and make those 50-50 balls. Brian Thomas is really becoming a huge threat for them down the field. We know Malik Neighbors is elite. And then Logan Diggs providing stability and production from the running back, something that LSU has desperately needed. Jaden Daniels can't be the one doing everything, and he's not having to run as much when you have a guy like Logan Diggs that you can turn and just hand the ball to and say, hey, buddy, go get me 4, 5, 6 yards and we'll come back and do the next play. I think that's big. That's very big for them. And, that's going to help them late in ball games, especially as well, and probably help keep Jaden Daniels a little bit more healthy this year. He struggled with some injuries last year. And I just think, anytime you have a team like Arkansas come in and give you their best shot early, that defense stepped up and forced a couple of red zone stops that were key in this game, created a couple of turnovers. But we also learned that secondary for LSU has problems. I mean, they're getting lost in zone coverage. They're having they're getting beat a couple of times in man coverage. It is a struggle right now on the back end of that LSU offense, particularly against a Arkansas team that, quite honestly, I mean, I said, Haas made plays, Armstrong made plays, but they had not had any kind of separation all year at the receiver position, tight end position. That's playing teams like Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU. They had not been able to make the kind of chunk plays that they made all year until they did so in LSU, in Baton Rouge. Now, I think that's a little bit concerning. If you are LSU, you got to get that tightened up, especially playing a Ole Miss team on the road this week. So I think we learned that, hey, Jaden Daniels and that offense are very mature. They make a lot of plays, but that defense has got some problems on the back end. The front end continues to be pretty salty. Mason Smith, Harold Perkins, all those guys up front, but they got to get those questions answered on the back end. If you're LSU, Mississippi State showed some resiliency. I think they showed that they're not going to just mail in the rest of this year. They played with great effort, and Will Rogers was back to being vintage Will Rogers. He was putting the ball down the field. Now Tulu Griffin was running wide open. I mean, it was wide open spaces out there for him. It was like a Dixie Chick song going out there in Columbia. Tulu Griffin was just, nobody around him. A couple of times. Justin Robinson made some plays as well. They still didn't have balance because they couldn't run the football. So it's been that they couldn't throw the football well or didn't try enough to throw the football well. And in this game, they didn't run the football hardly at all to give balance. So Mississippi State's at some point going to have to find some balance in the offense, even though Will Rogers had a really, really good performance in terms of putting the ball down the field. They allowed too much in the run game to South Carolina. South Carolina was very, very below average, let's say, running the football coming into this one. And they allowed Mario Anderson to be efficient in the run game for South Carolina. He had 26 carries for 88 yards against them. Spencer Rattler got out and hurt him a couple times with his legs as well. So I just think that, hey, Mississippi State showed that they're not dead yet. They're going to fight. They're going to have, opportunities to be in games. They do get to go home. Bad news is you got Alabama coming in there. But, hey, is this an opportunity to show, all right, now we've shown we can throw the football like crazy, and Alabama is, susceptible at times to giving up some big plays through the air, but Terrion Arnold played really, really good this last game, so they won't be able to just pick on him. Got to find ways to get the ball to Tulu Griffin more and more. I mean, he's explosive, and we saw that, hey, you got to get him touches. But overall, I just think the effort and the ability to bounce back after getting your doors blown off against LSU has to be encouraging for Mississippi State. And little baby steps here for Zach Arnett and company. They're continuing to kind of put their fingerprint on this program and see where it's going to lead. And I think the defense ultimately has to be better against the run. They're going to have to load up and just say, listen, Alabama, you're going to have to force us. You're going to have to beat us down the field because we're going to put a lot of people in the box. We're going to do some run blitzes. We're going to create some different looks. And Jalen Milroe, you're going to have to try to beat us going down the field. That's got to be their answer in Starkville this week. Missouri. Going into week 5, are the Missouri Tigers the most complete football team in the SEC? Have they played the best overall complimentary football of any team in the league throughout the year? And you look at them, and my goodness, they play really, really good defense. They are efficient on offense. Not just efficient now. Brady Cook is starting to make some plays. I mean, he's out there even hobbled up. He's throwing the ball well. They had over 500 yards of offense. I mean, my goodness, they held Memphis under 100 yards rushing. It is a ridiculous amount of just togetherness that we're seeing from the offensive side and defensive side under Eli Drinkwitz. Impressive back-to-back wins, Kansas State and Memphis. So I think you can't overlook this Missouri team. Eli Drinkwitz got that extension last year, and some people question, hey, what's going on here? Why did he get an extension when he hasn't really won a ton of games and things like that? But I think that you're starting to see that pay off, the benefits here of why Missouri was looked upon favorably, or why Eli Drinkwitz was looked upon favorably by the administration there, but they believed in what he was doing there as a program. The legislature has changed its laws there in Missouri to help out with NIL. But I think as long as Brady Cook is playing the way he is, getting the ball to Luther Burton frequently, and then they're starting to get some running game out of Schrader and Pete. They had over 200 yards rushing against this Memphis team. So I just love the balance with this team. And, even though that they've still got some things they can clean up, I'm excited to see what Missouri is going to do, as we get deeper into SEC play. They should start off 5-0 with a game at Vanderbilt this week. They're going to be more talented. They're going to be better up front on both sides of the ball, and they should be able to stop Vanderbilt's passing game. That's really the only real threat they have is with Jaden McGowan and Will Shepherd over there. Who knows who the quarterback's going to be, but I think Abrams Drain and Rakestraw will be able to lock them down at the corners. So I'm excited to see what Missouri is going to do going forward. I mean, they're probably going to be 5-0 after this week, with LSU coming into Como on October 7th. So, hey, don't sleep on the Tigers. It's going to be an interesting run here for Eli Drinkwitz and company going forward. Ole Miss, they played pretty well defensively in that first half. They've got to find a way offensively to run the football. I just don't know why they're not able to run it as effectively this year. Quinshon Judkins hadn't really shown up that's the way that they wanted him to. I don't think he's totally healthy still. They did get Caden Priestcorn back. That was a big for them. They got Zachary Franklin back, but you would have thought they would have had a little bit more explosivity in that game against Alabama. They weren't able to do so. Jackson Dart, not his greatest game, threw the ball into double coverage there to begin the second half and really gave Alabama more momentum than they needed there right as they were going into the third quarter. I think coming home, they're going to play a lot better, especially against a LSU secondary that is quite suspect. They really, really need to get Quinshon Judkins rolling, or that running game, whether it's Bentley, whether it's Judkins, whether it's Dart with his legs. This Ole Miss offense is at its best when it's able to run the football, and then the passing game comes off of that. That's what Lane Kiffin wants to do. I just don't think the defense, they're very senior heavy. I mean, you look, they got 10 out of 11 in that starting group. They're seniors or either grad seniors or transfer seniors. I mean, there's a lot of experience, a lot of football there. I think Pete Golden did a pretty good job with that team defensively. You would think going into that, hey, if you told me, hey, Ole Miss is going to hold Alabama to 24 points, I would have been like, hey, I think they got a chance to win the ball game, because I thought Ole Miss would be a lot more explosive offensively. So just got to play a little bit better complementary football. Jackson Dart, I still believe that he can play really well. I think he's going to do some good things in this game against LSU. And Lane Kiffin, for all the trolling and everything he does on Twitter, he now came out. He was very complimentary of the Alabama team, and now he says moving forward, focusing on beating LSU. So we'll see what that environment is like in Oxford. I expect it to be a great environment. And Vegas, listen, Vegas only likes LSU right now as a 2.5-point favorite on the road there at Ole Miss. So I think it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a tight one. And Jackson Dart and Quidshot Judkins just got to get things going. They weren't able to stay on the field and keep drives going. They were 3 of 14 on third down. Just can't do that against a good team in Alabama. So I think Ole Miss, we figured out, hey, they're still a good ball club. They just got to clean a couple things up, especially when you're playing elite competition. South Carolina, Spencer Rattler continues to just play off the charts football. He is so efficient, finds ways to deliver the ball where his receivers can make plays. Xavier Leggett is a freak. I mean, a guy shouldn't be able to be 6'3", 227 pounds and split defenses like a Learjet going through there. I mean, he can absolutely fly. They finally got some running game going with Mario Anderson. When you can turn it around and give a back 26 carries and he can shoulder that burden, I don't care how much he ends up producing. That is huge. That is huge for your team, and it helps create balance. TJ Sanders continues to show that he is he's a force there for South Carolina defensively up front. I mean, they get Strawn and Tonka, all those guys playing well, but I like TJ Sanders and what he's doing, a third-year player there for South Carolina. They had some horrible lapses in the secondary. Shane Beamer called it embarrassing how they let Tulu Griffin just run wide open down the field and make plays on them like that, just getting lost, not having discipline back there. So, if they can keep a sense of balance, okay, running the football. They don't have to be elite running the football. You just have to have a modicum of balance. That's going to help you out tremendously, particularly on the road at Tennessee this week. You got to find some way to be able to run the football just a little bit so that defense with that crowd noise there in Neyland isn't able just to pin their ears back and come after Spencer Rattler. That's going to be a problem if they do. So I just want to see how they respond, especially with all the emotion that's going to be in this game. It's a revenge game, so to speak, for Tennessee after South Carolina, wrecked their season last year. But I think you just got to be encouraged by how they improved a little bit along the front there on the offensive line in terms of running the football and getting some blocks for them, for Mario Anderson. And, they got to be more disciplined in the back end on defense. Make sure that they're stopping the run. They were able to stop the run against Mississippi State. Can they do it 2 weeks in a row? Because if you can stop Tennessee's run game, then I believe you'll be able to frustrate Joe Milton and company a little bit, but that's easier said than done because Tennessee runs the football quite well. Now, speaking about Tennessee, here we go. They win a game in a fashion that they should. They have over 300 yards rushing. Still, Joe Milton in the second half of that game, there were some struggles passing the ball, but hey, were they up? Was that a lack of focus? I don't know what's going on in terms of that. They still are more productive running the football than they are throwing the football, which kind of is a good thing for Heupel and company, because running the ball, I think being able to run the ball and stop the run, I think that goes with you throughout the year. The passing game sometimes can be hit or miss. But, in the SEC, I always say if you can run the ball and stop the run, you're going to be good. Tennessee, in large part, handled a lesser opponent, and now they get to move on to a SEC opponent in South Carolina coming in there. Like I said, the emotion going to be high. Can you show maturity and just do your job and not make it about, hey, last year South Carolina ruined our season? I know all the fans, the environment is going to be absolutely crazy there. They continue to have different backs that are able to step up. Dylan Sampson had a huge game for Tennessee. We learned that, hey, if Tennessee can run the football, you can't stop them, okay? you have to make sure you stop Tennessee's run game first and foremost if you want to have any chance of slowing down that offense, because once they get that tempo going and once you have to start committing extra hats to the box, boom, that's when they take their shots deep and they take care of business on you. And that's what Heupel tries to do. I just think that defensively, they play hard. They got after UTSA. They stopped their run, and that's what they're going to have to do against South Carolina. Don't let them have any kind of success running the ball, and then just force Spencer Rattler to play, out of his mind again and play the best game of his life to try to beat you. I don't know that you'll have enough weapons for South Carolina to really threaten Tennessee's secondary deep. I know Xavier Leggett can be a game breaker all in himself, but just don't know what that's going to look like for South Carolina and the recipe to go in there and take care of business against a Tennessee team. We know the defense is disruptive for Tennessee. Which one are we going to see? Which defensive front? The one that we've seen in all the other games this year, the one that we saw down in Gainesville, where they weren't able to fit runs properly. They were just maybe a half step off of where they needed to be, and Florida just absolutely gashed them. So I don't think South Carolina's got that in them run game wise, but if they're able to just be efficient, that's going to help Spencer Rattler a lot. So can Tennessee play that style, that disruptive style of defense up front, and get after them? But I think what we learned is, hey, Tennessee has an identity. It's running the football. It's stopping the run. And then it's being able to hit explosive plays once you come up and try to stop their run. So I think that's what we learned about Tennessee is there is a blueprint, and they just have to follow it, and they have to stay disciplined to it. Texas A&M, we learned that the talent is a real thing. Okay, that they are just a talented football team across both defensive and offensive front. I thought they played well. They can just absolutely discombobulated Auburn in terms of defensively. Auburn was so frustrated on offense that it just couldn't function properly at all. Texas A&M looked dominant at parts of this game, but they left some points out there in the red zone. Max Johnson, honestly, he gave this team a boost. They looked a lot better when he came into the game than when Connor Wegman was in there. Connor Wegman goes down with an ankle injury. He just comes in and, man, he looks comfortable in the pocket. He's able to extend plays as well, plenty athletic enough. This is a guy who has 4,600 passing yards in the SEC in his career, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions after this game, where he had 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions against Auburn. Threw a touchdown to his brother. I think that they're starting to get a little bit better running the football. I think they need to. We learned that Reuben Owens is special, man. You got to get him the ball. He didn't have a ton of touches, but when he did touch it, you saw flashes of brilliance. And I just think he's a guy that's able to make people miss, and you got to find ways to get him the football. So I think that's something that you got to look at there. Just being able to finish in the red zone. But ultimately, we learned that, hey, Texas A&M is as talented of a team as you're going to see in the SEC West, and I think they are right there in the thick of it to try to win this thing. And this is going to be a huge game for them in Jerry's World against Arkansas. I think Max Johnson will probably end up going. I just doubt Connor Wigman's going to be able to come back. They said the x-rays are negative, but hey, when it's an ankle sprain like that, and particularly when Max Johnson played the way he did, I think it gives you a lot of confidence. Anaya Smith, Evan Stewart, they're just deadly. They're guys that can hurt you at any point in time. So Texas A&M, a lot to like going forward. I think it's going to be always an interesting game with Arkansas and Jerry's World, but I'm excited to see it. Excited to see what's going on. And then finally, Vanderbilt. They got terrible play offensively, made bad decisions with the football. AJ Swan, is he injured? Is he not? We'll see. I don't know what's going on with his elbow, but there was talk about that after the game. They're not able to run the football. The defense is playing hard. They tried to bow their back even with a short field one time. But when you're basically spotting 21 points to the other team with turnovers and field position, man, it's just tough. And Clark Lee's getting really good special teams, really good effort on defense, but offense is just not there. They don't have what they need up front to be able to produce an effective running game. They do have good receivers, but the quarterback play hasn't been there at times, and they can't really protect QB as well as they need to. So it's just tough right now. I got to continue to be patient. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, you got to get more talent in there somehow, some way. It's very hard to get transfers in there, so they're going to have to do it through recruiting a lot of times. So I just think you got to find ways to continue to get McGowan and Shepard and Logan Humphreys and those guys that can make plays the football. But hey, all you can do is try to play hard against a team that is coming in, a Missouri team that I think is very balanced, a very good football team. But Vanderbilt has some fight to them. I think we learned that, but they just don't have enough talent right now to totally compete. Like I said, everybody, that is every SEC team, what we learned this week. Make sure that you like, subscribe, you turn on notifications. We touched every team in the SEC, and we will continue with our morning reports on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll have Jake Crane with me from Crane and Company on the Daily Wire on Fridays. Stick around later today, 11 to 12 Central, 12 to 1 Eastern. We have our daily show with Chris Lee, Gavin Schoenwald, and also Blake Level hops on there from time to time as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I am Blayne Gilmer. Make sure to check out Chomps in the description below. You got a discount down there. And remember, if you want to be part of our team, hit up Caroline.Smith at Southeastern 14. We'll catch you next time to talk more SEC football for your place for daily SEC coverage, not just football, but basketball and baseball as well, right here on Southeastern 14.